Welcome, 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 Liberty lovers. This is Matthew Struck with YAL Libertarian coming at you every Tuesday at 5 p.m. with another live cast. We have an awesome show set up today. Just real quick reminder, we need you to like, comment, subscribe, share. Definitely smash the like button, smash the notification bell, and really get this message out there because we want as many libertarians as possible or potential libertarians to hear what we have to say. So, like I said, huge show today. We have the one and only Larry Sharpe on, and we also have a Jersey guy. So I'm a little bit more partial to Mike than I am maybe Larry because of my Jersey roots. But we got Mike Rufo with us as well. How you guys doing?
What's going on, guys?
Fantastic. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're going to do a little postmortem here on the election. I know that, Larry, you had an awesome live last night, Ask Me Anything, where, a lot of the questions had to do with the election. Before we kind of like get into the presidential, can I say BS that's been happening over the last week or so, I just want to kind of focus on the libertarian candidates. The big ones that I wrote down 4 names. Obviously, one of them is sitting in our episode right now, but I have Rainwater, Harrington, and then the one that I'm not sure got very much press until he won was Marshall Burt out there in Wyoming.
Everyone thought he wasn't. He was the sleeper. It was amazing. So good.
Everybody thought Bethany was going to be the one, and it turned out to be him. So that was fantastic. I mean, 27 votes shy for Bethany, but I mean, man, Wyoming's looking great.
And the weird part is, I invited her on my show, and they were like, "Nah, we don't need that." I'm like, "No, I might have got you 27 votes, maybe."
Yeah, every view helps. Every view helps. Right?
Who knows?
I don't know if this is right, but the statistic that I saw was Burt was the first state level Libertarian Party victory since 2002. Is that right? The last one was in Vermont. Representative Nell Randall, I think, was the last one.
I don't, maybe partisan, nonpartisan. We have had a couple of victories.
Okay. Maybe they ran as independents and not listed as libertarian.
Yeah, that might have been it.
Yeah. No, I think that was huge. I think what's even more incredible that was a full 3-way race, right? For that race.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's insane.
What people don't understand is, we actually have a better chance of winning in a 3-party race, but a better chance of making impact in a 2-party race. If that makes any sense, right? Because if there's 2 people running, we get all the "I hate those guy" votes, right? So by default, we get more. But in a 3-way race, unless it is a runoff state, right? Even if it is still, but I mean, if it's not a runoff state, that means if you just get more than the rest, you can win the election with 35% of the vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. In Georgia, you can't. And Shane Hazel proved that. So Shane let us know that, no. In Georgia, you got to get 51%. 50% plus 1 vote. I'm sorry, 50% plus 1 vote. So Shane got like 3%, 2 or 3%, something like that. And so now no one got over 50%. And the runoff in Georgia is because of him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And it's funny because he's getting so much hate from both sides. It's I think he's just for the last week now, he's just been deflecting off Republicans and Democrats, saying that he cost their candidate the election. And I'm like, it can't be both, guys.
Absolutely. And good. And good. At least they're talking about him. Good. I'm happy.
More press.
And a reminder, anyone who's watching live, you can definitely comment and question for Larry, Mike, or myself if you have anything you want to say or ask any specific questions about the election. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Mike. Go ahead.
No, he did something really awesome. I think it was today or yesterday where he said, "That's fine. Let's have both of the candidates on my show and the 3 of us can talk and we can figure out who should get my votes." You know what I mean? And honestly, like, it's kind of in both their interests to do it. So he's playing it really well. Shane's amazing. I absolutely love it. And he spent $0.
I know.
More votes than Jorgensen did.
I bugged him about it. I'm like, dude, spend money. I was bugging him. After he was on my show, and he's probably, if he's watching now, he's going to be like, you did bug me. I did. After he was on my show and we got off, I literally was like, dude, raise money. Come on. Let me help. Blah, blah, blah. I was like telling people, give him money. Give him money. He was like, no. I was like, no, raise money. I mean, look, it worked. So I should shut up. But my point is, I imagine if he had raised money.
Right.
Imagine if he had raised money.
And what isn't this the test case year for ranked choice voting? Like, isn't this the time when you would think that people would get behind it and be like, that seems like an actual solution in this case?
Yeah, but then Republicans and Democrats have to actually have answers, and that's inconvenient.
Yeah, that was something you brought up last night. I think it was the concept that Republicans and Democrats, they don't want to solve anything.
No,
right? Like they just want to keep perpetuating the same strife and just kind of like throw a Band-Aid on it, but like basically zombie problems is what we have.
What I was talking about before is, the idea right now about the election fraud, right?
Yeah.
Both sides actually had valid arguments about 4 months ago, right? The Democrats were generally been Democrats, but others, but most Democrats were saying, hey, we're worried about COVID. We don't know if the elderly will show up. People who are afraid, will they show up? There's a problem. We have to have an answer for this, blah, blah, blah. Valid concern. Right. Republicans, hey, wait a minute. We don't usually send out 30 million. And then they thought it was 30. It actually wound up being 50 million. But then they were talking 30 million. We've never sent out 30 million ballots before. How the hell is that going to work?
Yeah.
These are both valid concerns. Yeah. So you're telling me that no one thought, why don't we get someone like KPMG, BDO, one of those organizations that are basically international, that spend their entire life auditing every single penny, every single thing to match all tax law from around the world, a company like that, to take charge of it. And since they're fiduciaries, if they mess it up, their leadership goes to jail, right? Because them being licensed professionals, they can't hide behind the corporate veil. So they know they're personally responsible if stuff goes wrong. And then either or use both of them or one, whatever, any combination, and then use companies like UPS or the Post Service or FedEx or Amazon or whomever to deliver them. You couldn't have found a solution. Of course you could have. You didn't want to.
But Larry, that wouldn't have allowed them to continue to drive home the theory that everybody is against each other, and it wouldn't allow them to divide the populace, because it would be efficient and it would prove that maybe government shouldn't be the one in control.
We can't really have that, can we?
No.
Yeah. Yet again, inconvenient.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a fantastic point. Is that I forget if it was you who posted that, Larry, or it might have been you, Mike, that posted it. But it was like, why is it the government can tell me to the penny what I owe in my taxes, but they can't tell me to the vote how an actual election happened? Right? Like,
yes,
that is exactly what you're talking about. It's like the smoke and mirrors. It's the crude application of the process is something they actually bank on, so that they can kind of like negotiate at the end of it, and what's funny is back in 2000, who had the problem? It was Florida, right? The election hinged on 1,000 votes. Who had absolutely no problem doing mass mail-in voting this time? Florida, because they had to live that life beforehand.
Well,
right?
the funny thing is, right, that sometimes the local people have to actually respond. Sometimes they have to, right? Because they literally get booted out. But Trump was honest at the end of 2016, after the end of the election. He said it's rigged, but I won, so I don't care. Yeah. That's literally his words. He said it's rigged, but I won, so I don't care.
Yep.
And sadly, everyone thinks that way. Not only him. He just said the quiet part out loud. But everyone thinks that, right? Oh, I won? Greatest system ever. That's all it is. Yeah. Oh, I lost? This system sucks.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we had 4 years of everybody telling us how the elections are flawed and people interfere and you can't trust the results because of influences from outside sources. But now all of a sudden we're supposed to just magically trust the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
My guy won. Good process.
How did the process pan out for you, Mike, personally, out there in Monmouth County?
Well, we did pretty much exactly what I expected to do. Just a little under 0.6% of the vote. One gentleman running has run 7 years in a row. Has got name brand recognition. He the only town he really clearly passed me in as a third party candidate is the town he lives in and the little towns surrounding it. But that was an uphill battle. But nonetheless, we did what we wanted. For me, it was more towards the second half of the campaign. I decided to make a shift and a focus on building networks, recruiting more members to the NJLP, bringing people in, convincing people why they should be running as a libertarian. And, in the last week, I've touched with 10 new members who are signing up for the party as we speak. I've touched base with 6 or 7 people who want to run for state legislator next year. We got an influx of questionnaires coming in for potential candidates. So as far as I'm concerned, with growing the party and spreading the message and having the platforms and people like Larry themselves giving me the opportunity to spread the message, it's been nothing but a huge success.
This is what I want to hear so much. I want to hear people who run with a plan to make impact, right? What I hear too many people run is that they go, I'm going to run. Why? So I can spread the message. That's awesome. Great. But then how do you measure that? Do you measure that by new candidates? Do you measure that by people signing up? Do you measure that by percentage of votes? I don't really care how you measure that in your own world because you know your local community better than I do. But you've got to measure it somehow. It can't be, and I hear it all the time, well, I just want to talk about liberty. Then get a podcast, man.
Yeah, start a podcast.
Start a podcast.
It's so much easier to just start a podcast than it is to run for office, follow the paper, get the signatures, answer all the questionnaires, go to the debates, handle all the stuff, watch your P's and Q's. Like, you don't got to do any of that if you start a podcast.
That's exactly right. Start a podcast. But if you're going to run, have a measure for impact. Right? Whatever that impact is. Look, I hope we all win, but the reality of it is usually we lose. Right. But how do you measure a win? Right? Is it? And remember, Mike, when you were on my show, I asked that question. How do you measure a win? Right? Is a win? I double my number of libertarians. I add by 10%. And again, I don't know what's realistic in your world. For some people, doubling is good. For some, doubling is a fantasy. I don't know what that is, right? So I'm so happy to hear that, Mike. Thank you.
And then sometimes your win has to change during the campaign as things start changing, right? When I discovered that everybody in New Jersey was getting a mail-in ballot, whether they requested it or not, and you couldn't vote in person, and everybody was getting their ballots in the first week of October, I completely changed my plans on how I wanted to do it because all the spend that I had laid out, everything that I wanted to do, my whole schedule got thrown off. And as a third-party candidate, I had to make a cost-benefit analysis. Where am I going to get the most bang for my buck? You know what? Let me focus just on building the brand in New Jersey. Let me focus on bringing more recruits in. Let me focus on sending people the link to join up. Let me focus on getting people excited to run for office and be a personality themselves to actually maybe win an election. And for me, that was I had to make that audible in late August, and I made the audible. And as far as I'm concerned, and everybody around us in the party, it was a success. So
that's awesome.
And Mike, you also, again, this isn't necessarily a strictly libertarian aligned organization, but I think, did you go through the YAL training, like the introductory training or the Young Americans for Liberty?
No, I haven't gone to their candidate training. I'm actually going to go in December. They have one in Newark in December.
I'm going on the 5th.
I'm going to go hang out, meet up with Justin, a couple of the YAL people. I'm familiar with them. I actually have a relationship with a lot of them as it is, especially in the Northeast, and I want to go out, want to hang out with some of the crew, and I do want to experience their candidate training just to see what it's like, because then I can take some of that, implement it here, and I want other people who want to run for office to come with me on December 5th. Come hang out with me, sign up for the YAL candidate training, because if anything, everything that Larry's been telling us for the last week about how to successfully run a campaign, you're going to learn that and then some, because listen, they had 130 some victories that last week. You know, they know what they're doing. They're not they got started really in 2017, and look what they've become. You know, that Operation Win at the Door has become phenomenal. So if you're thinking of running for office, and you whether you want to run as a libertarian, as a Republican, I don't care what you want to run.
No, libertarian. Libertarian.
You need to run libertarian. It's the only option. You're not allowed to run as anything else.
Yes.
Libertarian.
That's it.
You should be at that training. Like, I'm going. Yeah. I'm going to be there. You will see me there. I'm going to partake in it because I think I'm always looking to learn. I'm always looking to grow, and I know I'm going to grow and learn if I go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I love the fact that I wouldn't say they're agnostic, but they're not going to be discriminatory in terms of whether you align as an R or a D or an LP or whatever, independent. What they're looking for is that liberty component, right? And that's what I love about that. So, and me, I'm like, I love just to learn. So just to sit down and go through that process of figuring out how they put together these campaigns. And I think a lot of the campaigns that they put together didn't require like a ridiculous amount of money. It was just, you had to be measured and calculated and structured in the way that you went after it. They had a fantastic turnout. Yeah.
But you don't always assume victory.
Yeah.
Right. You have to run to win. And that's the key. You've got to, even though if you're not going to win, you have to run to win. When I started my campaign in New York, I was like, you know what? I'm a year and a half out. I have a chance of victory right now.
Mm.
And I did, because there was no Republican yet. It was just me and Democrat. No one else had announced. At that moment in time, I had a chance to win. So I acted accordingly. And to Mike's point, as the campaign went on, I started realizing, okay, winning, that's not going to happen. Maybe second place. Okay, that's possible. Okay, that's not going to happen either. So my rhetoric and my targets began to change. But as I always say, if you go for the win and you play like you're going to win, usually your consolation prize is really good. And my consolation prize was multiplying the votes in New York State by 6.
Yeah.
That from the last time, and literally to this day, still having the most amount of libertarian votes ever in New York State. Right. That was my and ballot access that they just recently took away. But ballot access for a couple of years. So my consolation prize was a good consolation prize because I was acting as if I could have a chance of actually winning.
Yeah. So now, what do you guys take on? So Jorgensen right now in the vote, Jorgensen got like almost 1.8 million votes. But in the percentage terms, it came in just over 1%. What's your impression? Pyrrhic victory? Is it a letdown? I mean, something in between. What's your take on that?
It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing. It's not a win. It's not a loss. It's nothing. It's nothing. No one's helped by it in the next 4 years. No one's hurt by it in the next 4 years. It's nothing. I would love to. I mean, people like going, oh, they were so great based on, and I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who says we got our ass kicked. Okay, now how do we fix it? Make it better, right? I like the Rocky movie, right? You get beat up, and you go back, and you figure out, you come back, and you beat the guy up at the end, right? I like that movie. That's what I like. I'm good with that. That's what I want, right? We don't do that. We do one of two things. We get our ass kicked, we leave and never come back.
Yeah.
Or we get our ass kicked and we go, we did great, let's do it all over again. No, both of those are the wrong answer. The right answer is 2%'s not great. Okay, how do we get 4%? How do we get 6%? How do we move forward? How do we get better? And sadly, we often don't. What we do is we blame others. That's the first thing we do. And then we yell that if you had been more of a libertarian like I said, then you would have won. If only you would have been the kind of libertarian that I am, then you would have won. And we do that and then yell at each other and then blame. And then half our people go back to Republican Democrat. And then we try to rebuild the party every 4 years.
So it's great that you said that because I really feel the exact same way. It was one giant nothing burger. Right? It really was. Like, it was weird because I was watching all the positivity on Facebook and everything during the campaign, but I kind of, I went through the Gary Johnson campaign. I felt what it was like to be a volunteer on that campaign. I saw what was going on. And I was like, all right, let's just see what happens. So then last night, along the lines of what do we do now, right? Like you were saying, Larry, we had two of our candidates, our state chair, and the two people that helped run the Jorgensen campaign in New Jersey. We had a 2-hour long, extremely passionate what went wrong meeting. And a lot of it was really looking ourselves in the mirror and saying, what did we do wrong? What could we have done better? If you're a libertarian out there and you're listening to this and you were involved with the campaign in any way, shape, or form, or you were involved with a local campaign in any way, shape, or form, it's not about, well, we did all these awesome things right. That's great. Did you win? No. So the only focus we need to have on is what did we do wrong? And that's not a negative.
Well, hold on. I want to just stop for a second. It's not did we win. Did we make impact?
Right.
Imagine if we had just gotten, what if we had gotten, say, 5%? That's a win. What if we had one electoral vote? That's a win. What if we had one estate? That's a win. So made impact.
Right. Did you make impact? Did you win your win? Right. Did you win your
Bingo.
win? What was your win? Right. Did you hit that? Great. Now, even if you did hit it, what'd you do wrong? Where did we make mistakes? What days were we most uncomfortable? What scenarios didn't play out the right way? And what adjustments are we going to make in this coming election cycle? So we had a really long conversation about that. And I think it was extremely productive. And I'm hoping and I'm excited that next year we're going to make the adjustments to what we did wrong here on the state level in New Jersey, and we'll have a better impact locally.
Yep.
And that's really what I'm focused on is that local impact.
Yes. I think Rainwater is the best example of this. Rainwater ran in Indiana locally twice or 3 times. I forgot how many times he ran, and didn't do very well. But he learned. He said, aha, let's get better. And now he runs for governor. He's rocking. What do you get? 12, 13%, whatever he got?
Something
Rocked
like
it.
that.
I mean, and got debates. And then, I mean, he was a rock star, right? Because of what you just said, Mike. He found out what happened locally and he moved up.
That's it. And that's the thing. Like, it's not a failure until you accept it as a failure and refuse to adjust moving forward. That's like just a life lesson, right? Like, we should, if that's the lesson we're going to approach when we're starting a business or we're doing anything else, like, you've got to take that same approach with campaigning. You can't just quit because you didn't get what you wanted the first or second time.
Yep.
Let me ask you this question. So until we have that local, we're still in kind of that local grassroots, like build from the ground up phase, right?
Yep.
Until we have that kind of broad-based local libertarian, not like voting block, but just presence, right? Until we get that, does it matter that the top of the ballot candidates have some kind of like name recognition?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Because
absolutely, yes.
My contention was Gary Johnson got 3.3%. And I think 1.6 the election before that, because he was a two-time state governor. Like, he might have been quirky, but he was a 2-time state governor. There was some gravitas that came.
He also raised $13 million. Right. That kind of helps.
Raising that kind of money gets you media coverage. Like,
if I would have had $13 million, I'd be the governor of New York right now.
If you have $13 million, you can buy ad space. And then when you buy ad space, guess who brings you on for free after you've bought the ad space?
Bingo!
It's the news network. CNN will take you on if you buy $1 million worth of ad space.
100%. You'll literally get a town hall.
Right, you'll get a town hall. You buy $1 million worth of ad space on CNN, you're going to get a town hall.
You get a town hall, 100%.
If you're the Green Party, I don't care what party you're in.
It's total pay to play. But there's another piece. He's totally right. It's pay to play, no doubt. And if you want to be in polls, you got to buy polls. So you buy the poll. The poll costs $40,000. You got $40,000 to buy a poll. You're in the polls. It's that easy. That's how that works. It's all pay to play. So $13 million helps. But also, he was known. That's true. He was known 100%. And Bill Weld had some connections to get him into certain areas, which got him a little bit more money, which got him a little bit more. So there were some advantages here or there, right? That did happen. The reason why the top of the ticket matters, and those who've been paying attention to me know I say this all the time, the top of the ticket has the least chance of victory, however, the most chance of press. The bottom of the ticket has the best chance of victory, but the least chance of press. So the top of the ticket's goal is to push press downward so that now you can have victories. I did this in my campaign. When I ran in 2018, I got tons of press, statewide press. I got some national press too. But a lot of statewide press, a lot of local press, tons of press. So I lost the election. The next year, I went back out again across the entire state again, supporting local candidates. All the press that remembered me from last time showed up this time when I came back again. Oh, the governor's coming back. The governor candidate's coming back. But what was I doing? I was emceeing for the local candidate. So local candidate now got response, right? I had 2 or 3 times that happened for someone we had upstate New York, Thomas Queter. I went up there to help. He got like 10% of the vote, right? Part of that, obviously, he had a great campaign. Obviously, he busted his rump. And I did my little piece by getting him some local press. So the top of the ticket needs to be able to draw press to push it to the bottom ticket, which is why people get mad at me when I say, Larry, why do you, when I say we should bring in Tulsi Gabbard, Justin Amash, anybody, as long as they bring press with them. That's all I care about. BYOP, bring your own press. You're bringing press? Thank you. Come. You may not get our nomination. You may not even run with us. That's okay. But bring the press. If you bring the press, now we have an opportunity to show ourselves. And if we're afraid of that, why are we running?
I think that top of the ticket person can be a mercenary, right? In the near term, right? Long term, you don't want someone who's not embodying libertarian principles, or at the very least, you want them to have a core of libertarian principles.
I think,
but they can be like, but like you said, you can adopt someone to get that press at the top as a means to an end. I think a lot of libertarians are so, ideological about their libertarianness that if it was Tulsi, and I'm guilty of this too, if it was Tulsi, I'd be like, well, great, she's anti-war, but she also wants to spend a ton of money on some of these other programs, right? But you know what?
Yeah, but hold on. I got to touch this piece. This is important, right? Then we shouldn't pick her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Let her run for the presidential nomination. Let her run. If we decide, you know what? Let's sell our soul. Then we made the decision. We made a decision with Jorgensen, right? We didn't pick Hornberger. We didn't pick Vermin Supreme. We didn't pick Judge Jim Gray. You should have picked Judge Jim Gray, damn it. But we didn't pick Judge Jim Gray. We picked Jorgensen. And whatever that is, and whatever, that's what it is. So we can't be afraid that if Tulsi Gabbard runs, that we'll pick her. Well, if that's what we want, then that's what we'll take. So she will either do one of two things. She'll either have to adjust her words, adjust her feelings and everything to match us closer, or she's not going to win.
Right.
We can't be afraid. And I literally did my Glenn Beck thing when I was drawing on a board. I was trying to explain how we have to be different when it comes to picking a presidential nominee. We can't just go, they yelled, get government out of it, therefore they're good. That's not enough. Yeah. They have to actually have something like you're talking about. They want to have some name recognition, some cash, a team, policies, something to move forward. We're just like, well, they ran. We should be discouraging people to run for president who are still living in their basement. We should be discouraging that. That should not be a positive thing, right? I mean, let them run. We shouldn't change bylaws. But I'm saying as a group, we shouldn't pick them.
Not to mention the fact that if a Tulsi or someone comes in and they don't revert to those libertarian principles enough and we say no, that might even be just as good, right? Because we're sitting there drawing a line to say this is a libertarian and this isn't. Like that.
You tell me that's not going to get us press? Imagine if Tulsi came and then we told her no. That's CNN. That's Fox. Are you kidding me? To a degree,
that's what happened with Amash for a minute. He jumped in. He was getting press, and then it was he's pulling out. The libertarian. He doesn't feel like he's got the support of the Libertarian Party. He's not going to be there. And then it did get us a little bit of focus on who we did choose. It wasn't a huge press, but it was more press than we would have gotten if Amash didn't do his thing and then back out. So I mean, in that respect, absolutely. And just
Amash went on Bill Maher saying he's libertarian.
Right.
That's big. The problem is he's not in office anymore.
Well,
that's the big problem.
He's got till January.
I mean,
but you know what? Listen, there's one thing I got to say. There's a lot of things we can do without being in office to actually affect policy, guys. Like, we don't have to be in office. If you have somebody like a Justin Amash who's running a policy team, who's helping libertarians lobby for adjustments to policy in their local community, like, that's just as much of an impact. And when the press picks up on what's going on, they're going to turn around and say, hey, the local libertarian activists were able to get this policy enacted in their area. The Libertarian Party is having an effect and change on government. Like that, you can do that without being in office. You don't have to be in office. Like in New Jersey, for example, if I've got there's many towns, I'm blanking on what the type of town it's called right now, but there's many towns in New Jersey where if you have something you want to get passed in front of your town council, all you have to do is get 10% of the odd year vote to sign a petition. So if 10,000 people in your town voted in last year's election, if you can get 1,000 people to sign a petition, the committee has to. The committee absolutely has to vote on it, and they have to do it in public. Yeah. So that's something that we can work on. That's something we're going to be working on next year. I'm going to be pushing the Defend the Guard Act, and we're going to have a resolution to start off. And we're going to be pushing to force these town committees to vote on whether or not they want to force Congress to declare war in order to mobilize the National Guard overseas.
I love the idea that you're saying, as I say it all the time, the Liberty Movement isn't only the party.
That's it.
And the party isn't only candidates.
No.
I focus on candidates because that's what I like. That's what I'm good at. That's what I focus on. The problem is many of us don't divvy it up. We think an activist is a candidate, is a guy who's going to get the ballot, which is the same guy who does policy. They're different. We have to put different hats on, right? If I'm playing my activist hat, that's not my candidate hat, right? That's not my run around yelling taxation is theft hat. The different hats. Activists sometimes should be yelling taxation is theft. They're activists. Get people to care about the issue. You got to get attention. But candidates need to be saying, you know what? No, here's a solution to the problem that I hope the candidate the activist yelled at you about. right? I hope the activists yelled at you so that you actually care about the issue. Now here I'm the candidate. I have an answer for that issue. And if I'm back end, right? If I'm the back end of this, I'm doing things like making sure signatures get signed. I'm making sure we're going through the laws, right? I'm not an activist or a candidate. I'm in the back making sure the stuff gets done. They're all valuable. They're just different.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's a good point too, because both you hit on a really good point. You don't need to be the Graham Poobah, okay, to enact libertarianness. Okay, you need to have a voting block. You have to have an activist block within a community. And so I think what gets missed is a lot of people, again, coming back to that, like who runs top of ticket. They get so focused on who's top of ticket. And you're like, that's not what matters. It's the Congress, it's the Senate, it's the state legislatures that matter, because once there's a voting block of 5, 6, 7 libertarians that are now holding them to task, and by the way, they're the deciding votes on a lot of these things. Yep. That's when you have control. That's when you have leverage in order to have input into the process.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. Yeah. I say all the time. People say, well, Larry, we have to, just focus on local. No, that's not just focus. Focus on local and top of the ticket, right? But understand that top of the ticket is not exactly, is the odds of victory are down, but the impact can still be great. And we hope to see the impact at the bottom of the ticket.
Yeah. No, that's like a huge deal in terms of, I think a lot of people get all riled up, and they're all like, especially in a presidential election year, they all riled up, and it's all, they want the big focus on the big race that's going. And really it's the small, it's the same thing on a day-to-day basis. Like you did a live where you talked about like November 4th, like everyone's going to put their pants back on. They're going to go to work. They're going to get their kids to school or watch them or homeschool them, right? Like life doesn't necessarily change immediately, and the fight still continues. I think the other concern is whether or not, okay, election season is over, all of a sudden people take their libertarian pin off and it's like, okay, I'll see you in 2 years or 4 years. No, like the next, like 2022 starts now, right? Yes. 2022 starts, like it started a week ago. That's when it started.
I'm literally talking to my what I hope to be my mayoral candidate for 2021. I talked to her last week. I'm going to talk to her again this week. I'm doing a weekly call with her to try to see if I can get her to get up and running, because to run for mayor in New York City as libertarian is a monster. But we have to be better. What we're not that good at libertarians is urban voters. It's not our skill set. So the biggest urban city in the United States, biggest urban area in the United States is New York. So we're on it.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that the libertarian positions they're right in line with the best interest of urban voters. They've just been hoodwinked for long enough to think that it's actually the opposite. And it's really not true. Go ahead, Mike.
Absolutely.
I cut you off.
No, I was saying you have to be. I mean, that's New Jersey. We're one of only 2 governor's races next year. We're already talking about what's the strategy going to be? How are we going to get the press? And that's what we're doing. Like we're game planning right now. Yeah, we're going to take off a little bit of time between Thanksgiving and Christmas so we can enjoy our families. But we got a lot of work to do in the next 3 weeks until we get to Thanksgiving, so that we have that plan and we can just hit the ground running in January. And I'm hoping we have a contested, candidacy for governor in New Jersey.
All right, let me know when your convention is. I'm coming.
That's it. March. It'll be in March.
I'm coming.
Fantastic.
Awesome. And I can say from personal experience, I've voted libertarian for 3 election cycles now, for 3 presidential election cycles now. But this is the first year that I felt compelled to pony up, and it's not a lot of money, but to pony up the money to be both a New Jersey and a National Libertarian Party member. And it was really because I'm tired of that kind of like hope of the flash in the pan, right? Like, and I come at it from the perspective that you come at it from, Larry. I'm a business owner. I understand what it is to grind it out every single day, client by client, policy by policy, product by product. That is something that a lot of people miss in terms of their day-to-day life. But it is so valuable when it comes to just the idea of campaigning and getting that next signature, that next vote, that next endorsement. It's like a one-by-one kind of thing. But eventually you hit that exit point, right? Like you get that exit velocity.
Tipping point.
but you have to grind like hell, and it feels the hardest the closer you get to that point, because that's the point where there's the maximum amount of resistance against you.
That's the old saying in business is, it took her 10 years to become an overnight success.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the star quarterback that throws the touchdown pass, and you're like, oh, I could do that. But you don't see, the 5 a.m. wake up call and like the knee surgery and stuff like that goes with it. Exactly.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. But
100%.
so I let me ask you this. So in terms of like this election cycle, I kind of want to like pivot to,
Well, let me jump on what you talked about though. I'm a lifetime Libertarian Party member. And I'm still, even though I'm a lifetime member, I'm still a monthly donor. So I put my money where my mouth is, right? If I'm going to beg people for money, and I do all the time, yeah, I've got to be able to say I'm giving too, right? I'm with you.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who's like, both of you, what would you say to someone who is like that, I guess, theoretical libertarian who's like, I don't want to pledge allegiance. I mean, they're almost like ANCAPs or they are ANCAPs. I mean, like, I don't want to pledge allegiance to the party, right? I like the principles, but the last thing I want to be is just another Republican or Democrat that votes for the jersey and doesn't vote for the actual product that's put out on the field.
Do you like to eat McDonald's?
I don't, but
some people do, right?
Some do, yes.
So yeah, if you want to go to McDonald's, then does that mean, well, now I can't go to McDonald's because then I'm going to be in a McDonald's team? No, yeah, you go to McDonald's because you like McDonald's. If you like Kentucky Fried Chicken, you go there. If you like Taco Bell, you go there. I don't care. Go wherever you want to go. I don't say, well, no, I don't want to go to McDonald's because I'm on a McDonald's team. No, you like McDonald's, so go eat there. I don't care. If you like libertarians, support them. Period. If you don't like them, don't support them. Bingo. This idea of like, I don't want to pay. That's a bunch of self-righteous horseshit. And I get that all the time. But that's what it is. I'm super cool. No, you're not. No, you're not. You think you are. And you look in the mirror and think you're cool. But I'm looking at you going, no, you're not. You're just self-righteous. And you think you're super cool. You're not. You're just not prepared to make a stand. So now, when a shit hits the fan and the enemy comes over the gates, you're the first person to run.
Yeah.
So no.
And you've got no
backup. Fight.
Yeah, and you've got no backup. Yeah, you're on your own.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know if I'm in trouble and I beg Mike to come to New York City and help me, he will.
All day.
He knows it. I know he will. And he knows
why.
Absolutely. And he knows if he goes, Larry, I need you to come to New Jersey and raise money for my gubernatorial candidate. He knows I will. I did it last time in 2017. Yep. He knows I'll do it, right? Because we got backup with the same team.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Mike?
He auctioned his shirt off for $500. It was beautiful.
That's actually true. That actually happened. Yes.
I would say, listen, and I tell people all the time, so listen, I'm not asking you to pledge allegiance to anything. The only reason you're asking me or you're even inquisitive about it is because you like what you hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I tell you what, come along for the ride for a little while. If you don't like it, leave.
Yes.
It's okay. I'm
not paying dues.
I'd rather you give me 3 hours of your time because that's 3 more hours I'm going to get from somebody else. And if you don't want to help anymore, it's cool, man. I'm down with it. At least I know you like me. At least I know you supported me for a little bit. And you did what you felt was necessary to advance the cause. And if that's all you got, that's all you got. Because every minute from every volunteer or any dollar from any volunteer, it goes a lot further than it would go if we didn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
No, and that also goes to that piecewise kind of thing, right? Like it's the same thing building a party. It's like person by person. Right. And you'll have ebbs and flows, right? You'll have years where you get a Gary Johnson who gets 3.3%, and then you'll have years where you get 1.2 or 1.4%. But the key is what direction you're headed in. I think the Jorgensen campaign, I think, suffered from the fact that she couldn't hearken back to, this is the talking point, this is the principle, this is the plank, and this is what I did when I was in elected office to implement it.
No.
I think that really suffered. No, you don't think so?
No.
What's your thought on it?
Campaign, there was no policy.
Bingo.
Biggest
exactly. It was a broad statement, and it wasn't something that was enacted.
All rhetoric.
The whole campaign was rhetoric. There was this is the policy we're going to enact. The only policy talk I heard was in the last week when Spike came to New Jersey and he talked about the Social Security plan, the 6% plan or whatever that Cato plan that's out there for phasing out Social Security. That was
only a year too late. Only a year too late.
Right.
That could have been his policy a year ago.
They should have been stumping that from day one. From
Absolutely,
and that was the only problem. Is there really it was all rhetoric, and
yeah.
and to the people who did complain and gripe, that's pandering. That when all you're doing is putting out rhetoric, you're just pandering to people. You're not giving anybody solutions, and if you don't give them solutions, no one's going to vote for you. One of the best things I heard recently was right in the middle of the summer. Ron Paul did an interview, and with Kibbe, and he was talking about how when he would talk and he would go out and talk to people and he would be running for office, he would spend, if it was an hour speech, he'd spend 40 minutes telling the story about why everything is so bad. But then he would spend the last 20 minutes telling them how we're going to fix it.
That's a good point.
You don't really get a lot of that.
Let me give you how every question was answered. Hey, can you fix this thing? Let me give you a history lesson. And then let me give you rhetoric. That's how every question was answered.
Yeah.
No one votes for that. I mean, I'm sorry. We do because we love it. We go, yay. Yay. You said our rhetoric. Yay. We vote for you. And you get how many libertarians there are? 1.2% or whatever that is. That's what you get.
You get your base. You get your base. That's all you get. You don't get
your base
coming in from the outside.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, and people can't necessarily see how that manifests, right? Like when you kind of like give them that kind of like theological, like, well, you have to trust it. Immediately they turn around and they go, well, those are just libertarian ideals. No one's ever done anything like that. But what gave Ron Paul a lot of street cred was he could say, no. We did this in the past, and this was a libertarian ideal that manifested itself, and this was the result that we got from it. I think that's a huge talking point there is like, you can't just have these big blanket statements. I mean, it's great to say that taxation is theft, but if your ultimate goal is to get to zero income tax, okay, how do you get there? That's the question, right? Like what's the intermediate step, or what's the series of kind of like, what's the environment look like to let the libertarian principle win out in a competitive race?
And what's the cool name of the policy so that someone can remember it, so they can tell their friend that cool thing, right?
Like we're really crappy at branding. We're crappy at branding the policy.
Like the Patriot Act, right?
Perfect. Oh my God, Mike, yes, the Patriot Act.
You take something completely evil, you give it this really dope name, like, oh man, if I support this, I'm like George Washington because it's the Patriot Act.
Waving your flag, yes.
It's the most evil thing we could have possibly passed.
Get my three-corner hat on, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that's it. I supported it. But no, and that goes back to Larry's point of you have to separate the activist from the candidate. We can't expect candidates to be activists. It's hard to toe that line. Like when like for myself especially, right? Like I love touting out taxation is theft and the Fed and all. I love saying all those things. I have no problem throwing them out there. But I got to be able to provide some kind of solution for people. I can't just say, yeah, we got to get rid of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah,
because what are you doing right now? You're waiting for me to tell you more, right?
It's why I spend so much of my time in my head as a candidate. Because you're right. If I start getting off, the other part is if my head is in candidate head, I don't get so angry. When I'm an activist head, like when I'm around a libertarian, I get upset. I get angry. I get fiery, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not always a good look for a candidate. No. So I try to keep in my candidate head. I don't get as upset. I still sometimes get upset. But if you ever see when I get angry or upset, it's almost always when I'm talking to libertarians. Almost always.
I tell you what, I had a full conversation about gun controls with Democrats in 2018 in the Democrat tent. And it was one of the easiest conversations I've ever had.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I completely agree. But I'm sorry, Matt, you wanted to go over to us about next year or this year or something?
Yeah, no. I was just going to say, in general, in terms of like the way we see the presidential campaign with the major parties playing out, I would love to get your take on it, because I think there are really disparate views right now in terms of one side thinks they won and one side thinks they are getting screwed, okay? But there are some undercurrents here that I think are getting glossed over by the drama. And I would love to see what you guys think are those kind of like subplots to the overall story that are actually playing out in this election cycle.
Is that one mine, Mike? I'm sorry. Yeah, he got quiet. That's mine. Yes. No, I think it shows what some people get upset about, but the press calls the president election. It does. Now, legally, it doesn't. Legally, only the Electoral College can. Legally. But in reality, the press does call the presidential election. So when Fox and CNN say Biden's the president, the vast majority of America goes, oh, okay, Biden's president. Now, when that happens, you might say, well, it's not legal. True. That's totally not the legal way of doing things. Absolutely correct. But now I have people in the Senate, people in Congress, who their constituents believe Biden's the president. So they're going to bend because they don't want to make the constituents unhappy. Yeah. So we've shown that the press has a lot of power over who the president is, if that makes any sense, right? So the press calling it, while again, not legal, still winds up being super powerful. Now, when you add on top of that, what now begins to happen? Because we've spent so much time in a broken, disparate media world where people spend their time watching either CNN and MSNBC or Fox and OAN, that all of a sudden that's all we hear, which is why some people were shocked. I remember this in New York State, walking around New York State, and people telling me, both sides, Biden's going to sweep it. He's going to win 40 states. It's going to be Trump's got no chance. And then the next guy in the next place, exactly opposite. Trump's going to win 49 out of 50 states. He's going to crush it all. He's only going to lose California. That's it. And I'm saying to myself, that's not even close to true. And then I had people tell me that Trump was going to win New York. I'm like, I know my state better than most. I travel it every single year. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I know my people. That's not who they are, right?
There were people in New Jersey that said Trump was going to win Jersey. And I was like, where do you live?
Exactly. I don't know.
There's no way that's happening.
No, that's not going to happen. And I think that insularness, is that a word? It is now. Insularity, whatever the word is. It's that thing. All of a sudden, when the loss came, they were broken. And the Democrats were broken too because they thought it was going to be a landslide. And it wasn't. It was just barely a win. And they're like, I can't believe it wasn't a landslide. And Republicans are like, I can't believe I lost. So now they're both unhappy with both sides. So now what happens? Now you find the right angry at Fox News now because Fox News is worried. They're like, if the Trump world collapses, where are we? We have to play the game because we don't know. Is Trump going to survive this thing? Is he still going to be powerful after? Is a Kasich going to come back and rule the party? Right? Is that going to happen? Is some other firebrand going to show up? Right? Is Tom Cotton going to show up and run the party? Right? What's going to happen? They don't know. They're trying to hold themselves. It's going to work. And the worst part is they now have the Georgia elections. And that makes the Republican Party afraid. If it wasn't for the Georgia elections, the Republican Party would have turned its back on Trump like that. They'd been like, bye, loser. And they'd have turned their back, stabbed him right in the back. But the reason why they're worried is if they do that, the Trump supporters might go, is that who you are? We're not showing up in Georgia. And then Democrats get 2 Senate seats. So Georgia is the reason why the Republican establishment has not stabbed Donald Trump in the back. I think they would have.
It's all Shane Hazel's fault.
The man himself.
Shane Hazel is the one hit. The entire nation hinges on Shane Hazel's actions.
Absolutely.
The most powerful libertarian in America.
Shane is the linchpin of American democracy. Right there. There it is. I love it. I love it.
What would you say to someone that said that it's okay that Trump lost because at the very least, I think a lot of people weren't voting for Biden. There were a number of people that voted for Biden, right?
Totally true.
But a lot of people that cast their ballot for Biden were anti-Trumpers, right?
There was literally a hashtag settle for Biden.
Yeah.
That was real.
Yeah.
That was real.
Yeah. I thought that was parody, like Babylon Bee stuff at first. But no, it was real. It was like a real website, settle for Biden. Like, wow.
But that being said, do you think that the voters might have actually had something correct in that vein? Because as good as the policies were or weren't that they were looking at for them, there was kind of a reverence that Trump didn't really show for the office, right? Like there definitely wasn't a humble bone in his body, I don't think. And I think coming from the libertarian standpoint, we want someone who's going to sit in the office that we know is going to do the least amount of damage possible, which requires almost like an extreme level of humility, understanding that like you could do more damage than help in that position. I mean, do you think that they were kind of not necessarily right, but I mean, at least warranted in kind of taking that tact where it was like, look, I have this person who has a very adamant fan base, but at the same time, he doesn't like revere the office of the presidency. Or the other angle would be that he doesn't necessarily look at himself as a public servant. Do you think there's any teeth to that argument?
A couple things on that one. I don't think I don't want them to revere the office of the president.
Okay.
I want them, if anything, to revere the Constitution.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Two separate issues in my view,
Yeah.
right? When I start revering the presidency, well, now I'm royalty, and now I am a God King, right? I don't want to be the God King. I don't want someone thinking they're the God King. So if they're gonna revere anything, let it be the Constitution. I like that. That I feel that's better, right? And I haven't seen a president who reveres the Constitution I don't remember any of them. I mean, maybe there's one. I don't remember. Maybe Carter-ish. I'm stretching trying to find somebody, and maybe Carter. I mean, I'm pulling all over the place for this one, but I can't find one who did. They all are just expanded power. I'm only saying Carter because I don't think Carter bombed anybody. That's why maybe it's Carter. Everybody else bombed somebody. Carter's the only one who didn't. So maybe that, but they don't. But the real lesson I think learned here, or should be learned here, is that emotion matters. The people who didn't vote for Donald Trump, it wasn't about policy. They didn't like him. They didn't like him. The amount of I know a lot of Republicans in New York City. And a New York City Republican is a very mild Republican compared to, say, a Georgia Republican or an Oklahoma Republican, right? Right. What I would hear, I mean, hundreds of times probably, I heard, why won't Trump just stop tweeting? Why won't he? I heard that, someone take his phone away. Because every time he was on that phone, he seemed mean and nasty and selfish. Yeah. And when that happened, people didn't even look at his policies. They just said, man, that guy seems like a jerk. Why is he being so mean? And I think that's the biggest piece that hurt him is people didn't like him because Republicans didn't get beat up this year. Only Trump lost. Republicans did relatively well.
Considering all of the blue wave talk and everything that everyone was talking about, the Republicans did phenomenally. I mean, I think they picked up House seats. Everyone thought that the Democrats were going to gain more traction in the House, and that didn't happen. At local level races and state legislator races, Republicans fared extremely well. You could say that people prefer gridlock, so they kind of tend to vote opposite when they go top a ticket. They kind of revert to go into the opposite side when they go to the lower side. Who knows? But nonetheless, you can't fault anybody for voting the way that they felt was right. Yeah. Okay, that's their vote, right? Like we say it all the time. Like, that's my vote. I own that vote. It's a reflection of my personal property. I can do with what I want with it. I can't tell anybody they were wrong for voting a certain way. I can be upset with the outcome of the election and wish that people would have voted more for policy and less for emotion. Absolutely. But I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody they voted wrong, because that's what everybody does to us, right? I'm not going to be that hypocrite. But at the end of the day, now we need to take a step back and be like, okay, there's this gun policy. There's this. Now we got to look at policy, and like it or not, we're going to have to build coalitions to fight against some of these policies, because everybody's emotions just got us a really bad batch of policy that people want to get passed in the White House right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other dynamic there is, even if you're not liked, if you're respected, that's okay, right? Like, if people don't like you and your policies, but at least you purport yourself in a manner that's semi-adult, I think Trump would have won going away, right? Because
I don't know. People didn't like Hillary, and Hillary was professional. Hillary was super professional.
Yeah,
she was just really not liked.
There's like 25 years of baggage behind that, though. Like,
so that's my point is, she purported herself professionally, and people hated her. I'm not sure I buy the professionalism. I mean, she was, without question, she was professional.
Yeah.
And hated. She was totally both.
You got it. Like, it takes a very special person to win an election of any kind. Okay, it really does. Now, maybe not when you're running against a highly hated Donald Trump. Maybe it doesn't take that special of a person, right? I mean,
well, in fact, they picked the most milquetoast person they could,
right? Like
juxtapose them from.
I'm sure Joe Biden's a great husband, a great father, a great grandfather, a great uncle. I'm sure he's a great dude at home, but like, he's not exactly like jumping off the page as an amazing politician, right? Like, he's just 47 years, okay, same shtick that everybody else has been giving us for half a century or 20% of the United States existence. But you know, he's not anything special, and I think what a lot of people just wanted was comfort.
Yes, and this is what I said, and no one listened. It's why I said Judge Jim Gray. That's exactly why I said that. Yes, it was clear that that's what America wanted. We have been fighting to try to get the other cool thing since 2008. We all thought it was going to be Obama. Obama was going to be different. He was going to change everything, right? That didn't happen. And then what did the Republicans do against him? They threw the most milquetoast guy they could find against him. Then 2012, they threw the next most milquetoast guy they could find against him. 2016, Democrats said, we'll go milquetoast now. And Republicans said, we got Trump. Now that's 3 cycles in a row of us going further or trying to get the rebel, the rebel, the rebel. Trump doubled down on rebelness. And we went, okay, whoa. We enough with the rebel. Can we just have like grandpa or something? And then Democrats finally, not I think on purpose, but maybe they finally went, wait a minute, now it's milquetoast time. And they went.
So I will say that I do disagree to a degree about the rebel part, because I do think that Trump got away from a lot of his drain the swamp stuff. A lot of the stuff that made Trump extremely successful in 2016 was his constant chance of drain the swamp.
Good point.
The establishment is out to get you. The establishment doesn't care about you. He didn't really talk about that very much because he was so enthralled with COVID. COVID took over every news cycle. Every weekend, that's all anybody talked about. Yeah. So he really couldn't come out against the establishment because he had to cozy up to the establishment to keep people to liking him because of the way that the pandemic was being portrayed in the media. But if he would have just continued to rail against the establishment and draining the swamp, and I want to get rid of the career politicians, what better guy to do that against than somebody who's been in Washington, D.C. for 50 years?
I think you made a valid point, but I'm going to blame his campaign team. The environment was negative on Trump, but his campaign wasn't run very well. His campaign was run like 2016, and it should have been run with the basic concept should have been promises made, promises kept. That should have been his entire campaign.
Yeah.
You told me you want me. I told them to do this. I did this. You said this. I did this. You wanted that. I gave you that. That should have been his entire campaign. That's it. Yeah, I fired this guy because he was in a swamp. Yeah, I moved this because that's what I said. Yeah, I beat the Chinese up because of that. Yes, if he'd have done that only, I think he could have won this thing.
Right. Yeah. And when they did talk about how many people he fired, just like that, turns out he was part of the swamp. I had to get rid of him. I'm still trying to drain the swamp. And you just ride that. It could have flipped 20,000 votes in Wisconsin his way.
But the people I say in New York, as I'm talking about, I think the people who turned on Donald Trump aren't the hardcore Republicans. No, it's the middle of the road people that I know.
Yeah.
And when I ask any of my friends who support Trump, like, what do you like about him? They'll almost always say the same kind of thing. I believe the guy. He says a bunch of stuff. I think he believes it. Like, I don't trust anybody else. This guy says he's going to yell. He hates Russians. I think he hates Russians. I mean, like, that's how they believe.
Yeah.
So I think if he had played that, look, this is what I said. This is what I did. I think a lot of those people who were on the edge who went Biden would have gone Trump.
Absolutely. And that's what everybody says. He's not afraid to say it how it is.
Bingo.
He just tells it to you. None of the politicians speak. And if he would have he became a politician.
Bingo.
And that ultimately did him in. I really do think that's what happened.
Now, here's another angle to this too. The fact that he drew so well from Black and Latino communities, a long time the narrative has been at a certain point, we're just going to have Democrats elected all the time, right? Like, because of certain shifting demographics. Did Trump is one of the silver linings for the Republicans, at least, that he showed them the way to campaign to get those, Black American and Latino American
Republican
votes?
parties learned nothing. No, nothing. They've learned nothing. I was literally in a solutionary summit about 2 months ago with Maj Touré in Atlanta. And the number one thing everyone was talking about was how bad Republicans are at reaching out to the black community. They still think Candace Owens is the answer. Yeah. Candace Owens' audience is white. It's not black. It's white. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
No, they like
Larry Elder's audience is white. It's not black.
They like them because it's a convenient caricature. It's like, oh, they're like us. That's not true. There are. I mean, Maj is a perfect example. There are dudes that live in the urban centers that do not look like white Americans. They don't talk like white Americans, but they can benefit from certain types of conservative policies.
I'll give you my opinion on this, and I'm not speaking for Maj, but I'm giving you my opinion. If the Republican Party wasn't so crappy to him, he'd be a Republican.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. You could ask him yourself. That's my opinion. You think that, what's that woman's name? Kim Klacik? Is that her name? In Baltimore?
Yeah.
Baltimore, I mean, she's the kind of Republican that needs someone who actually will go into Baltimore.
Yeah.
Right? Most black Republicans sit behind their wall and go, you black people. That's not how you got to go there. You got to be in the hood. You got to be in the community. How the hell are you going to get people to believe in you if you don't show up? Right? And Republicans still don't do it. Yeah. So Trump would. Trump didn't care. Trump would go in any place. He didn't care.
And that I think that's the key right there. If anybody in the Republican Party is paying attention, it's the fact that you actually have to go to those areas, right? You have to go to the urban area, no matter what your personal. Listen, if you're scared to go into those areas, maybe there's some truth to you being a bit of a racist, right? Like maybe you're making some pre-assumptions, right? So just go into the neighborhoods and start talking to people. You just go into. You can't win a voting block without engaging with that group of people. Now, I will say that Trump with the Latino community helped draw out the clear divide that may be in the Latino community when it comes to socialism. It's very clear that your Cuban Americans, your Venezuelan Americans, so a lot of the socialist refugees are not going to vote for socialist policy. As much as the Democrats came on TV on the 4th and said, I can't believe he called us socialists, let's be honest, everybody knows what you're doing. They can see through your talk because they lived through it.
They lived through it.
Or their parents lived through it. You know, you actually had, like with the millennials and the Generation Z, like there was higher support for Trump amongst the community than you would expect because their parents have done nothing but tell them stories about what they went through. And that's why they voted the way they voted. So now you can't just speak to the Latino community as one community. Because now you have to actually say, hey, listen, just because they're all from South America doesn't mean they're all the same type of person, right? Yeah. Now you have to be less racist to Democrats, I'm sorry, right? And you actually have to look at where the person is from, what their culture actually entails, what their life experience. You know what? You might actually have to talk to individuals.
What?
And treat them like individuals. What? And maybe not play all of the politic games and and do all that pandering. Maybe you should actually just go find out what they actually care about.
You're a wild man, Mike. You're a wild man.
No, Mike, we can't.
If you went down to Miami and talked to a couple of Cubans, you would have figured out maybe they don't like healthcare for all. Maybe they've seen that movie before.
Yeah. And you know, this is a warning. I think this is a warning to AOC and the more kind of like socialist voices that are out there. They haven't been handed a blank check. Like they haven't
didn't learn that lesson.
This vote is not
a learn that lesson.
Vote. Okay, but
they should. You're right, Matt. They should, but they
should learn that lesson. I don't think they're going to, but they should take that to heart. Like if they start calling Cuban Americans in Miami-Dade County race traders and things like that. That is going to, this next midterm election, you could see the House flip, right? You could see a split, you know, Congress being Republican and a Democrat president, which, by the way, I thought this was interesting. You actually said, I think last night, Larry, that you're actually not always a big fan of gridlock, but it's not like all gridlock that you're not a fan of. There's certain types of gridlock you're not a fan of.
I don't like gridlock because what gridlock actually means is presidential or executive orders. That's why I don't like gridlock, right? People say gridlock's good. In theory, it is if we had a president who respected the Constitution, not the office, right? To my point earlier, what happens is the president goes, if you won't do it, I will, because I'm the president. And then they start doing executive orders, and all those orders have to go to the court. So now we don't legislate anymore. Now the president decides what the law is, and the courts then become legislators and decide, okay, yeah or no. So you still get the same garbage done. You just now have no debate. Now it's whoever's the president. Now the king says, how far can I push the Magna Carta is what now is happening, right? So that's why I'm not offended. We're like, because in reality, it just means more executive power.
Yeah. Now, that's assuming that you don't have a Congress that's willing to push back, right? Like,
if they're not going to do anything, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because the executive order, the Congress is not going to stop an executive order. Only the courts are going to stop an executive order.
Yeah, and that might be the different, but that might also be the difference nowadays too, though, because I'm not even sure the Congress would be willing to kind of call attention to that. They'll pay lip service to it to say, look what they're doing, but they're not going to take any substantive action or file any credible kind of like legal challenge, because that's something to run on the next election.
Well, that might solve a problem.
Well, yes.
We can't do that. That's very
inconvenient. We can't do that. We can't solve problems.
We've got to be able to yell Biden bad in 2022, right? We got to be able to yell Biden bad in 2022. So I can't solve anything, because then Biden might get credit. You saw it with the vaccine, right? Biden literally is saying it's his vaccine. Cuomo is now saying if it's Trump's vaccine, it's a bad vaccine because it's Trump's.
Because he's actually under the hood, Larry. He's putting the things into the vial.
Yeah, he had his gloves on. He was doing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, he sat at the tables and watched and wrote he wrote all the chemistry out.
Oh yeah, I saw him do it. I saw him. He put all the molecules together. I was watching him. Yeah. It's crazy. Yes.
I was assuming after Cuomo gave that interview, I was assuming what they were going to do is they were going to say, all right, time out on everything. We're going to review the process, right? We're going to look at how it was done, Operation Warp Speed. They're going to make a couple of token changes, and then they're going to hit play or hit resume. And then when it comes out the tail end, they're going to say, see, you're lucky we were here to take care of it. We actually got it.
They're not going to call it Warp Speed. They're going to call it something else.
Yeah, they'll change it. Yeah.
The Patriot Speed. Right, Mike? Patriot Speed.
It's the Patriot process.
The Patriot process. They'll call it that.
Patriot process. The FDA came out with the Patriot process, and now everybody's going to patriotically take the vaccine.
Exactly right.
It's going to be duty. It's going to be Operation Will Save Everyone. That's what it'll be. Yeah.
Operation Biden's the Savior. That's it. Yes.
They're going to co-opt All Lives Matter.
All lives. Oh, that's actually brilliant. Oh,
they're going to co-opt it. They're going to be like, "It's
be quiet. What are you doing? You're giving the playbook, dude."
It's like, you know what? We're taking that one too. The Democrats are going to take that slogan too. It's like, because of COVID, all lives matter.
All lives
matter. Get your vaccine because all lives matter.
There we go, man. You're giving them a playbook, man. What are you doing?
and the other ironic thing is you harken back to that, Mike, is everyone was like, oh, when Biden wins, the riots will stop and stuff like that. Portland, nothing's changed. Like nothing's changed. And to your point, Larry, it's because he doesn't speak to those people, to that voting bloc.
He doesn't.
That's not who he speaks to, right? And that's why all of that stuff was also just kind of bluster. Like you said, everyone wants to be comfortable and safe.
You have the people who are like the AOCs of the world, and if they're savvy, even if they're not there, if their advisors are savvy, if they're cruel, and many of them are because they're in politics, then what they'll say is, Biden, do you want the riots to stop? I'll stop them. You got to give me this or that. You don't? I don't know what's going on in Portland.
Yeah.
But imagine if the people, imagine AOC shows up in Portland and says, I got this. We're going to make this work. We're going to, whatever the bad thing she says, because she says bad things, the bad thing that we all think we want that's going to come back to bite us in the ass 3 years from now, that thing is going to happen. Yay, we're going to get bit in the ass 3 years from now. Yes, we are. Absolutely, yes. They'll stop.
Yeah.
But she's only going to do that if Biden agrees to her demands.
So here's where I'm a little, I think it's a little different in the sense that it's a fringe group of people that are doing all of this protesting. And what the Democrats did was they leveraged that optic for their own benefit, and they made that group of people feel as if they were part of the Democrat Party, or at least made the general public feel that way. Right. Yes. So, hey, look, we're progressive. We're going to enact these changes. And the reality is they knew that group of people wasn't going to affect the outcome of the election. There's not enough people who are that extreme to sway the election, especially since they live in states that are already going to go Democrat as it is, right? You didn't see these riots happening in Ohio, right? Now, or at least they weren't on TV that way. You know what I mean?
On the same scale, yeah.
For the most part, the biggest and largest scale was in the bluest of states. So all it was leverage. Now they bring this group of people in, they bring them under their wing. Oh yeah, you're some of us, you're some of us. These people aren't dumb. I mean, listen, they believe in dumb things like socialism and communism, but they're strategic in the fact that they understand that they got what they wanted. They got Donald Trump out of office. They got the Democrats in office. Now all we got to do is defeat the Democrats.
Yeah, but this is a big thing that both sides did for short-term gain. The Republicans doubled down on Trump is perfect. He's wonderful. He's our savior. He's the greatest leader in the world. They totally pumped up the cult of personality. They didn't worry about his actual policies. They didn't talk about his policy. They talked about he's the greatest. Without him, we're nothing. And now they pumped this up for all the Republican followers. And 90% of Republicans support Trump. So now if they turn on Trump, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
Democrats are the same thing. All these people out there rioting and protesting. Oh, those are our people. We love you, blah, blah.
Right.
Same thing. They can't turn against them now because they wanted short-term to beat Trump. They both wanted short-term wins, and they're paying a long-term price now.
And that's kind of what I was trying to get at, is that they brought this group of people in, and it's going to come back to bite them because they are eventually going to turn their back on these protesters. They're not going to defund the police. I've already said it once or twice on Twitter and anywhere else that's public. It's not going to be too long before Biden, the law and order president, comes to town.
Oh, yes. It's going to be about January 21st.
Yeah, January
21st.
January 21st, you know who's going to Portland? The National Guard.
Yeah.
If they're going to continue to riot, the National Guard will be in Portland. And what are they going to do? They're not going to turn around and blame the Republicans all of a sudden. And the CNN's not going to give it news coverage because it'll make the Democrats look bad because they're doing exactly what Trump was going to do.
Yep.
So it's just going to come back to bite them, and they're going to. I don't know how it'll play out in the long run, but the one thing that's going to be a constant is the media, right? Like you're not going to get press coverage of any of it. Whatever.
Or the press coverage that you'll get is when he sends the National Guard in and he basically oversteps that dividing line between state and federal. They'll act like he's the cavalry, right? Like riding in to provide structure and security and safety for everyone. When truthfully, what's the line? Like, when Caesar basically destroys democracy to the sound of, applause. That's essentially what it is. It's when the media is on his side and he decides to overstep, like you were talking about, Larry, not having that reverence for the Constitution and that division, that dividing line. Like that was the one thing I would say I would give Trump a lot of credit for. He did what he could within the bounds of the Constitution to address that issue. He said, look, you guys are state governors. You own your states. Okay. As far as like law and order goes, I'm here to help. If you would like the National Guard, I will send the National Guard. And in many cases, they said absolutely not. In one of the cases in Wisconsin, they sent the National Guard. That being said, he played the rhetoric game on the tail end of it, right? Like he was constantly trying to paint them.
Yeah, but that wasn't because he was constitutional. That's because it worked for him politically.
Well, yes. I mean, it just so happened to align. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, happy accident, I guess.
There we go. Yeah.
I would call it.
Yes.
He's no statesman.
No,
I'll tell you that.
I can't think of a president who actually respected the Constitution. I can't. I mean, I'm not that in my lifetime. I can't remember one. Yeah. Maybe Ford, because
Larry. It's a living, breathing document. Didn't you know that?
It is, and all those amendments, they're options. They're just options. Whatever.
They're not right. They're not right.
Yeah, they're just options. And if you're scared, none of them count.
No. We'll suspend democracy.
All of them.
We'll give Caesar control, and then we'll get it back afterward because they'll just willingly give it up. Right,
Matt, I'm scared. Okay, take all my rights. I'm scared.
Yeah.
Every one of them. Yeah. Every one of them.
Take them all.
I think one of the better memes that I saw that was a Second Amendment meme was one of these people that like are the recent gun purchasers, right? Like they're not 2A people. They're just like fear of the mob people, right? And they purchase the gun, and then here comes Biden coming in, and they say, okay, here's my gun, but when I start to get afraid of you again, you're going to give it back, right? And they're like, oh, sure, we'll give it back.
Yes. What's that old saying? If you want to, give your guns and the government take care of you, ask Native Americans how that worked out.
Oh, yeah.
That didn't work out so well.
No, not at all.
And they gave their guns in, and they let the government take care of them. Yeah, that's not a win.
Yeah,
that's not a win.
That is. I think that is probably the only good thing, I guess, to learn from that, or bittersweet, thing to learn from that situation. But
absolutely.
All right. Well, I know, Larry, you got something to get to at 7, so I don't want to keep you for too long. But I appreciate both of you taking the time out of your night. Look, every single time I get to talk this stuff, I love to, I'll sit here for 6 hours and do it, but I appreciate it. If anyone, again, Larry, I'll give you another opportunity. Mike, I'll give you another opportunity. If people are looking to connect with you or follow you, where can they find you?
The Sharpe Way. You can see it right there. I'm plugging it right here the whole time. Head over to thesharpeway.com. It's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything, YouTube. It's on all of the things. It's on all of the things. Please check it out. Almost every night, Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, about 45 minutes from now.
Awesome. Mike, where can they hit you up?
I guess right now I'm just going to live in the Twitterverse now that the election is over. So just hit me up at Rufo, the number 4 Congress. If you're in Jersey, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are because you're based in Jersey yourself, Matt, come out to an LP meeting. Come hang out. We'll shoot the shit. Sorry, but we'll BS. We'll talk. I'll talk to you about how you can help out. I have no problem being your friend, being your confidant, being your assistant, and helping you figure out what's the best way for you to promote liberty and for you to help lead the liberty cause. So you just go over to njlp.org/join. And if you're interested in being a candidate and running for office, fill out the candidate's questionnaire. Just it's right there, clear as day. You click on the little link that opens up all the separate tabs. It says run for office. Click on that, fill it out. One of the chairs from the regions will reach out to you and we'll have a meeting about whether or not the candidacy makes sense for you and the party together. But we're here. There's 40 seats in the state legislature there's 40 districts, 80 seats. I want at least one person in every seat on the ballot. Now, I know Larry's, if you're going to be a candidate thing, but if you're going to be a paper candidate, tell me you're going to be a paper candidate. If you're going to be a part-time candidate, tell me you're going to be a part-time candidate. And if you're going to hit the ground running and come in with thousands of dollars and a strong campaign team, tell me, because those are we're going to give focus to each campaign differently.
I'm coming over then.
That's it.
I'm crossing the bridge if that's true.
Yeah. And Larry's over and he's going to help you out even more.
I am.
So
yes. Watch out, Larry. Cuomo might not let you back over if you come over.
I'll sneak in. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry. We got ways to get him in. It's not a problem.
We're good.
I got him across the border. It's no big deal.
A couple decent disguises. We'll disguise him as a Republican or a Democrat. They won't be able to tell. Well, thank you again. Have a good evening. And if you're watching this live, definitely hit up Larry, the Sharpe Way, at 7 o'clock in about 40 minutes. And we'll come at you next week on Tuesday. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.